and we have Elham Shirazi, another one of our consultants with the 511 team, who will be speaking on building-based TDM solutions. And I will now turn it over to Matthew. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to just start today, give you a little bit of a rundown of what the agenda is going to be, but I also wanted to point out, obviously everyone's line is muted, so it's a little bit hard for you to ask questions, but you should see a question box available to you as part of the GoToWebinar tools. If you type in a question, if one comes up, feel free to just submit it when you think of it. And what we're planning to do is save a few minutes at the end, or actually more than a few minutes, but plenty of time at the end of the presentation to go through those questions and answer them. So we welcome them. Just submit them as they come to you, and we'll get to those. But what we're going to run through today is obviously the welcome, which we're working on right now, and then we'd like to discuss a little bit with you on LEED and TDM in general and how you can use TDM to get LEED points and LEED certification. And then I'm going to hand the presentation off to Elham, who's going to be discussing building-based TDM programs. And then we're going to open everything up for questions. And so I want to talk about LEED, and I understand that there's a broad knowledge level in terms of what LEED is. And so I'm going to, in this presentation, try to go down the middle. I'm sure there's some people on this call who know a lot about LEED, and there might be some people on this call who have never heard the term before. So I want to spend some time explaining what it is, let everyone understand that and how it overlaps with transportation. And then really spend some time with why LEED is important. So, what is it, but why should I care? And we want to spend some time there. And then looking at how programs that are designed to reduce drive-alone trips can help you get a LEED rating and certification. And then I also want to spend some time talking about how 511 can ultimately help you get LEED and your building certified. And I want to also point out, I think, we're talking about buildings, we're talking about LEED certification, but I also want to point out that there's a lot we're going to talk about when Elham starts speaking about TDM programs that are applicable regardless of whether you own a building, you manage a building. So if you're sitting here thinking, wait, what am I doing on this call? I don't actually own a building, I don't manage a building. There's something for everyone in this presentation. With that said, I want to give a little bit of background on what LEED is. And it's actually a rating system for, what it says up there, the design, construction, and operation of buildings. And what it does is the higher your rating, it's more indicative of the environmental sustainability of your building and how it's operated and how it's maintained and how it's constructed. LEED looks at a lot of different things. It's not a one-size-fits-all program. There's LEED certification that you can get for designing and constructing a building. There's LEED certification for interior design and construction. And then once these buildings are in place, there's LEED certification for operating and maintaining a building. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, is the certification that's associated with the operation and maintenance of a building. LEED is handled by the U.S. Green Building Council. They oversee the rating system and then the application process. And I think I alluded to it, but there's different levels of certification that you can get. So while there's different types, the building design and construction, building operations and maintenance, within each of those areas you can get different levels of certification, and it starts at certified and it goes all the way up to platinum. So with that kind of as a little bit of a background, and there's a process, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that process as to how you get a LEED rating. But why is LEED important? Why would we care about it? And one of the things is that buildings that are LEED certified are typically about 25 to 30% more energy efficient than buildings that aren't. So that has a lot of benefits. It means there's reduced energy costs, reduced environmental footprints, and LEED also looks at a lot of environmental issues inside the building, so they tend to be a healthier building for employees. LEED buildings generally offer better commute options to employees, and we're going to talk more about that. And buildings that are LEED certified typically have higher lease rates, higher occupancy rates, and they're worth more when they go to be sold. So there's a lot of benefits that can come to a building that has LEED certification. So I want to talk a little bit about operations and maintenance. So that's one of the categories that you can be certified in with LEED. And operations and maintenance is, it looks at, for an existing building, how is it operated, what processes are used, how do you handle your systems, your HVAC, the cleaning materials that you're using. And so there's a big maintenance process. The LEED documentation for it is over 100 pages long just to go through how you get certified and how you earn points toward that certification. But some of the things they look at, so you'll get rated as a building on how you manage rainwater. What are you doing to control light pollution? What's going on to reduce indoor water use? How's your building performing from an energy standpoint? What's happening with waste? Are you controlling indoor tobacco and improving air quality through better use of cleaning supplies? So there's a lot of things that happen to get a certification within LEED as for building operations and maintenance. And I mentioned before that there's different certification levels, so I want to speak to those because it's a little bit important as I move forward in the presentation to kind of get a feel for what is the range of scores and how do you get a good score. So the rating system is based on a 100-point scale. Now there's 10 bonus points that you can get. There's 6 points available for innovation and design, and there's also 4 points for regional priority. So innovation is what it means, you know, are you doing something innovative in terms of your operation and maintenance? And then the regional priority, different areas throughout the United States, there's different groups, they establish what those points will be. And then in terms of certification, the lowest level is certified, and all you need is 40 points out of that 100 or 110 if you want to look at the bonus points to be a certified LEED building. And then you can see as you go up, you've got silver and gold all the way up to platinum at 80. But keep in mind that 40 points for certified, 50 points for silver, and 60 points for gold, because what I want to talk about for today and really dig into now is you can earn points for implementing programs to reduce drive-alone trips to your building. And you can get as many as 15 points for doing that. So if you think about that, you can be certified with 40 points, and this one category can get you up to 15 points. That's a lot of points that you can achieve by really focusing on how people are commuting to and from a building. And we're going to dig into these points a little bit more. And I did want to, before I go too far, to note some people may be fairly familiar with LEED and know that the rating system, there's an overall rating system and it focuses on operations and maintenance for just kind of the umbrella existing buildings. But then there's special categories within there for schools, retail, data centers, hospitality. But what I'm talking about today applies to all building types. So it doesn't matter what kind of building you're working in or managing. What I'm talking about today applies to all of those. So I think that's great to know, and it kind of shows that transportation really is important for LEED. So this first one I want to talk about is how you get the points. In option 1, first thing you can do to get these LEED points and the transportation points is to conduct a transportation survey. And that'll get you 1 point, and I'm going to talk more about all of these things. And then the next thing you could do is to conduct a travel survey and actually show that people are commuting sustainably to your building. So that means that people are carpooling, they're walking, they're biking, they're using low-emission vehicles, you know, hybrids and electric vehicles. And then a third option for earning points is to, again, do a survey, but also implement a TDM program. So a program, different strategies designed to reduce the number of people who are driving alone. And I think it's worth, you know, we're talking about that there's up to 15 points, and they're all associated with how you commute to and from a building. And you might be thinking, well, why is this important? And different studies have been done And some have shown that in terms of energy use at a building, we can look at all the energy that's consumed in a building. And then when we look at how people commute to and from that building, on average in the United States, the commutes to and from a building are using 30% more energy than what the building is using to operate and maintain itself. And then in newer buildings that have become more energy efficient, it can be 100% more energy that's associated with people commuting to and from that building than what that building's using. So there's a reason why this is a significant portion of a building's LEED rating and why so much attention is being given to it by the U.S. Green Building Council. So moving on, I want to talk about that first option, so that you can get, all you've got to do to get 1 point towards your LEED certification, which is 2.5% toward just certified, is Conductive Survey. And with that survey, what you're trying to do is figure out how people are traveling to and from your building. There's different rules about how the survey has to be conducted. You have to get at least a 30% response rate. It really needs to be as high as 60, because if you don't get that high, there's actually some penalties in terms of how you get to calculate your commute, how people are commuting to the building. And you have to get a certain, really large buildings, you can work on different samples. And the great thing is that 511 has a tool that's available. They've had it verified with USGBC, so it's approved, and so they can help you with this survey. They have the tools in place. They can help you get the response rates you need. And the analysis of the survey data is a little bit confusing because you have to control for carpools get factored in a different way, and so they can help you with all of that. So if you're looking toward LEED certification, and this is a point you're interested in, 511 has the tools to help you out with that. Now let's talk a little bit about the second option that's available for obtaining points. And that was, you needed to do a survey, and from that survey we needed to figure out, well, what percentage of the trips to and from the building are made using sustainable travel modes? So someone traveling by a mode other than driving alone. The more people you have coming to and from your building using sustainable travel modes, the more points you can get. So you can see that at the base, if you have 10%, and I think, in the San Francisco, in the Bay Area, most buildings would at least get that number. They're going to be higher. And so you can do this analysis and you can figure out what your alternative transportation mode split is. And you can earn up to 15 points with 70% of your people commuting that way. And that is a realistic number in the Bay Area. So great way to earn points. And then there's option 3. And that's, again, doing a survey. But this time, instead of just stopping with the survey, you have to implement some programs to help change behavior, to help people not drive alone to work. And what LEED has created is 3 different categories. There's education strategies, basic support strategies, and direct strategies. And what they've done is provided some examples within each of these categories, and you as a building operator have to implement at least one item from each category. And I'm going to just go through those real quickly. So the education strategies, some of your options are conducting new hire orientation. So when new employees come into this building, making sure that they understand what their travel options are besides just driving. Education through newsletters, flyers, announcements, that kind of thing. And then also having a carpool matching website. So a website where people can go to help find someone that they can carpool with to work. And these are all things that 511 staff can help you with. So if this is a route you're interested in pursuing, there's staff and resources available to you to help you, implement these strategies. The next area is basic support strategies. And this is looking at having carpool events to help people find carpool partners. Implementing a guaranteed ride home program, for some of you who might not be familiar with that, it's just a program where people who don't drive alone, if they have to leave during the day, maybe they got sick, something happened, they can get a free taxi ride home. Preferred parking for rideshare participants, so that's just making sure that there's good parking spaces, so something makes them desirable, they're close in, they're near an elevator, they're covered, what have you, available for people who are riding in carpools. available flex time scheduling, letting people come and go a little bit more option in terms of that so it's easier for them to use transit, and then ride matching services. And again, these are all services that are available through 511. And Elham, when she does her portion of the presentation, is going to dig into these kind of things a lot more and tell you more about the services that are available through 511. And then finally, the last thing you would have to do is select a strategy and implement it from the education area. And, oops, I went backwards, sorry. The final one is direct strategies. And here you need to do something like telecommuting, compressed work weeks. Those of you who are familiar, maybe someone works 40 hours in 4 days, so then they're avoiding commuting on that 5th day. Transit subsidies, introducing a parking fee, bicycle programs to encourage people to bicycle, parking cash out. If you're not familiar with that, what that does is, generally this is used when parking is free, but what you'll say to someone is, yes, your parking space is free, but if you'll give it up, we'll give you money instead, that's the equivalent of the value of that parking space. And then also programs to help employees purchase clean vehicles, and then carpooling, which you kind of see show up in all of these strategies in one form or another. So those are the 3 ways to get points toward LEED, but I want to bring us back to this graph because, you know, of the 3 options, this was the second one. But let's say you chose option 3, and you were on a lower end in terms of alternative transportation mode use, so you decide to implement programs using the resources that are available to you through 511. Well, as you implement these programs, your alternative transportation rate is going to go up. And you're going to get more points when you go back to recertify for LEED. And you have to do that at least every 5 years, so you have time to build up your program. And even if you started out, say, you work with 511, you do your survey, you find out that you have a 30% alternative mode rate, and so you earn 7 points. But you can also work with 511 to implement new programs so that the next time you do this survey, that rate is going to go up. So maybe you're now at 45%, and now you're going to get 10 points. And so I like to think of it as a virtuous circle. It's going to happen for you when you work with 511 and you work toward these points. And, you know, the first time you work, you might not get as many points as later after you've started implementing these programs. And this slide is a little bit extra, but, you know, I want to revisit the different ways we can help. The transportation survey. 511 has an approved online tool. It can be really easy. If you have a lot of employees who have email access, we can distribute the link electronically. They can complete the survey very quickly. If you need to distribute it to employees who maybe don't have email addresses or computer access during the day, we can work with you on that. If you remember, you have to get a 30% response rate and ideally a 60% response rate. That can be kind of hard to figure out how to do if you don't do a lot of surveys. And there are 511 staff who can help you figure out the best way to distribute your survey so that you get that high response rate. And again, helping with the analysis. It's not an easy process, and they're there to help you. And then the development of those TDM programs. And what are you going to do to get people to drive less? And Elham's really going to spend some time there. And then I also want to just note that we can help with program impact estimation. So if you're looking at that and you know, okay, this year I have a 30% alternative transportation rate, but I want to implement some programs and I want to work with 511 on that, we can help you estimate how that's going to change travel behavior so that next time you go up for certification, you have a good understanding of where you're going to be and what kind of points you're going to be able to get. And I want to end my portion of the presentation just by noting we've identified a handful of different building sites within the Bay Area that have certification levels for operations and maintenance. You can see they vary. You know, this list starts at certified and it goes on up to gold. You can see there's different types of buildings. We've got some commercial, we've got office space. And then just on this next page, again, a just different listing, and here you can see some buildings that have been obtained platinum rating. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and you know, if this is something you're interested in, we would definitely encourage you to reach out to us. It's something we can help you with, don't leave those points on the table. They can get you a long way toward a higher certification rate. And if you are certified right now and maybe you're silver, we can hopefully help you get to gold. And with that, I would like to hand things off to Elham.
Thank you so much, Matt, and good morning to all of you. I'm Elham Shirazi, and what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about building-based transportation programs. And what we really mean by that is how can you use your infrastructure and your building to make it more amenable to alternative transportation modes. And the reason that many building owners, managers, and even if you're an employer that owns the building, of course, does this, is if you have tenants, it's a great way to retain tenants because it makes it easier for them to reach their ride-share goals, and especially given the introduction of Regulation 14 in the Bay Area, all employers of 50 or more have to have a transportation program of some sort in place. And it's a great recruitment tool if you want to have more tenants. It reduces overhead in terms of parking use because obviously we use less parking when people are not driving alone to work. And there's a potential for expanding facilities. What I'd like to do is now talk to what are the benefits for the tenants, or the employer that resides within the building. Obviously, being green matters, and I think a lot of what I'm going through ties very well in with the LEED certification. However, you don't have to necessarily be LEED certified to make your building more attractive for ride-sharing purposes. But it's also a great tool for recruitment. Again, employees look at options when they look at jobs in today's market, and we all know the gas prices are low right now, but we never know when they're going to go up again. So, the cost of transportation at times can be very expensive. And especially in the Bay Area where people have some people have very long distance commutes. We also see improved productivity because if people can participate in some mode of ride sharing or alternative transportation, it can reduce tardiness, it can reduce absenteeism, and by virtue of not driving to work alone, people are less stressed when they get to work and can, get to work much more quickly rather than spend about 15 minutes or half an hour to de-stress from the commute. Obviously, a lot of these programs help boost morale. We hear from employees all the time that when they have options that, it's a factor in them staying with their employer, and especially when we get into programs where, sometimes teleworking is available, or you can use commuter choice and, be able to avoid taxes on if you're van pooling, taking transit, and also just providing alternatives to the general commuters. A lot of times, the property manager can play a big role in actually helping develop of the program for the building. In fact, there are buildings where, such as the Sunnyvale City Center, where the building is managed by Jones Lang LaSalle, and they actually provide the ETC and provide a lot of the amenities to facilitate the number of trips that are generated. And so the property manager helps meet with the tenants, helps implement infrastructure and makes amenity improvements, such as some of the options that Matt talked about, like preferential parking, parking for bicycles, lockers, showers. And in many ways, what the property manager does is, allows for conversations to start happening around how we can help the tenants of the building participate more easily in some of these alternative modes. And of course, property managers also can disseminate information not only on commuter choice compressed work weeks or teleworking, but also on transit, on bicycling, and they often become a one-stop shop for getting information on how to get to that building. There are many types of programs, and again, I don't want you to be overwhelmed thinking you have to do everything that I'm going to present in order to have a transportation-based program. It really varies in terms of how far you want to go. But obviously, some of the strategies do include, and a lot of these we can through 511 you can get access to. Include providing ride-sharing match lists. We can come out or help your employees get matched with other tenants in the building or other employers in nearby facilities. We can help identify how you can implement a guaranteed ride home program or take advantage of an existing program so that it takes the worry out of ride sharing in terms of, if an emergency comes up, you have an access, to either a rental or a taxi or some other form of transportation to be able to go home or take care of your emergency. And again, we see that a lot of employers and buildings are starting to include information on car sharing. As we know, we are living in the economy. This is the economy of sharing, where people car share, bike share, and there are a lot less resources around. So this is, this is what we call this point in the economy. And obviously, there's subsidies. You can always check with us at 511. Sometimes we do have programs that will actually provide incentives for van pooling and for carpooling. We can also help, work with you to get discounted bus or rail passes. And, also talk to you about what are some other incentives that might work for people who bike to work, walk to work, because sometimes it's harder to provide incentives for those groups. But obviously, helmets, shoes, equipment, bike service, all of those go a long way. Again, continuing, with the types of program, obviously the building can be a really great source for marketing the program. And, this would be simply including, articles about maybe the ride share of the month in the building newsletter or profiling a particular tenant. It also includes providing tenants with information that they can pass on to their employees. Sometimes they're building-based contests, and there might be a challenge, for biking or for walking. And these get handled at the building level as opposed to just simply at the employer level. Something that we can always help you with, of course, is hosting a rideshare fair where we can come out, and maybe it's even a good idea to tie to another event that you're having, such as a health event and a wellness event, where we can bring out, talk to the vendors so they can bring out a van, and we can have information on modes of commuting, and have a little bit of a demonstration of some of the possibilities, so that we can educate both your tenants and your employees. And we can also do what we've done quite a bit is do lunchtime seminars where we go to a building or to an employer and talk about alternative transportation. And sometimes these are just brown bag lunches, so the building doesn't have to be providing food, but it helps if you're trying to get people. Some other strategies that make, I think, buildings a lot more efficient, as Matt was talking about, is to support tenants' parking cash out programs. By the way, another way that cash out can be used is that instead of paying for your employees' parking, you as an employer or a tenant, you may decide to make the monetary value of that parking space available to the employees, and then they get a choice as to how to spend it. And a lot of times, because people are economically minded, they will, they may join a carpool, so they just, have to purchase one parking space and then, save money. Or they may be able to join a van pool, and, and that amount that was going towards their parking now will be a great incentive for their van pool. Another incentive that works is because, sometimes ride sharers have to drive to work, maybe validate a few, days of free parking. Sometimes I, hear of 3 or 4 days per month that get validated. And obviously, if there's the availability of, having flexibility in terms of a lower parking rate for carpoolers and van poolers, that can definitely help carpools and van pools form, especially when the employees picking up the cost. And what we've seen, again, that has been very successful is when a property owner unbundles the parking costs from the employee site lease, then the employer has a lot more flexibility in terms of how many spots it does want to lease and be able to encourage more ride sharing, because that way, they may not pay for everybody's parking, and they may not have parking available for every single employee. So that would actually help, promote some of these other modes such as carpooling or van pooling. In fact, many of us in the transportation industry agree that free parking is probably our biggest enemy, and it's something that we have to overcome in order to, get more people to participate in some of these alternative forms. Some other types of programs are facility design improvements. I think this really ties well with what Matt was talking about, but maybe add or improve bus stops, make sure that there's a shelter where the bus stop is. Make sure that your building is friendly in terms of transit. Hopefully that there is a transit stop that is near your building, and you want to make sure that you have loading areas for carpoolers and van poolers, so that it facilitates dropping off people and picking up people for those purposes. Having pedestrian walkways are really critical. So often I am shocked, I think we're all shocked, that we have very, very narrow pedestrian walkways, so in a way that prohibits people from walking to work, especially if it's not safe. So that might be another thing to look into. And as I mentioned, adding biking facilities such as lanes, parking, lockers, and showers go a long way in encouraging employees to, or your tenants to participate in biking. And as we all know, this is a mode that has been growing very, very quickly and fast amongst employees. There are a lot of people who use biking now as a way to be healthy and as part of their wellness program. Some other facility design improvements include making parking more convenient for somebody who is, taking an alternative mode, and a preferential parking is a very good example of that. But having maybe some spaces reserved for carpools, van pools, near elevators, or something that gives quicker access to the building. Some amenities that are very useful in reducing other trips during the day are having amenities such as an ATM, a cafeteria, maybe dry cleaning, and some of these other types of amenities that reduce people's needs for running errands during the day. Because a lot of times, it may be that we don't need our car to get to and from work, but it's what we need to do during the rest of the day. and this can really change our dependence on the car. Creating a transportation center is a great idea, and this would be, a physical place where employees, tenants can come by and get information, on how to, maybe they pick up their bus pass there, maybe they can pick up a transit schedule there, maybe they can register for ride sharing, and maybe, they can get some promotional materials. And it's great when the transportation center is staffed. Now, sometimes we see buildings that just, showed and design, they demonstrate, some of these brochures and information, and sometimes there is, limited staff. Maybe it's, half a day or maybe a few times a week that people can come by and get more personalized assistance for ride-sharing purposes. Now, I want to quickly also just go through some of the steps that are involved. Again, please know that, these are all just guidelines, and we're here to help you. Obviously, having a building coordinator is just as important as having a transportation coordinator for an employer, and the role that transportation coordinator plays is in, helping identify policies for a lot of the amenities that are available, such as policies for, getting access to a guaranteed ride home program, and would be, this coordinator obviously would, be helping promote some, the incentives, parking benefits, or any, changes that you have been able to make to your infrastructure to make it easier for people to access the location. Sometimes the coordinators plan events for the building and contests. And, they really, I would say, act as an ambassador to opening the door for educating the tenants and the employees to how to get to the building without using your car. And, again, the dissemination of materials is all included, and sometimes, the coordinator might have to do some reporting. In fact, sometimes some cities, require a building to reduce vehicle trips, and, usually these are set by the city, and obviously the coordinator, would work on how to obtain that information. And again, as 511 with our surveys, we can definitely help you in documenting changes in people's travel behavior. And let's move on to the next step. Really is, this is based on assessing tenants' transportation needs and identifying, what would the tenants find valuable. I mean, obviously, you will be looking at what makes sense for your building. If, transit is not a possibility, obviously, you may not be able to, to promote transit. And when it is, when you're located in an area that's transit friendly, you definitely want to have access to all that information. Starting with a survey is a great idea. Again, surveying the tenants or the employees in the building to find out what makes sense, what are they interested in. And in fact, this survey can be bundled with your LEED certification survey so that you only survey once and get a lot of information. So again, 511 can play a role in that and make it very easy for you to conduct that survey. Another important step is to do a site analysis, and it simply means finding, as I was saying in the previous slide, what alternatives make sense. And typically what you want to look at is, what's the parking availability, what are the transit stops, locations and schedules, what is the bicycle, what are some bicycle amenities, and, also for people who walk, are there lockers, is there a changing area, and having some amenities on site. There are many ways to come up with a budget for a building-based program. Obviously, one option would be for the building to take on the cost. and pay for it. But there are other ways that you can pass on part of the cost, which would be included in the lease to your tenants. So, so every time a tenant moves in, it's part and parcel of the lease that they're signing that they would be, the transportation options would be available to them through the building. You can also prorate the monthly cost based on, number of employees each tenant has and include that in a monthly bill. You can directly charge for your services, which, as we all know, when there's a cost for programs, people a lot of times value it more. Also look for funding through existing agencies such as transportation agencies or government grants. And again, 511 can definitely help you lower those costs. Sometimes we see that there's subsidies and incentives. I think the first thing to do is to find out what's available on a regional basis. Work with us at 511. But some samples of subsidies that can help include covering the cost of a few empty seats in a van for a few months, so that van has a chance to fill up. It may be providing free bus passes for first-time users. Sometimes it may even be having an ambassador that helps someone. I know this might sound funny because in the Bay Area, I know you're all very used to this, but to even help someone get a bus pass, get on, or their mode of transportation, learn how to use the machines. Another type of incentive, obviously, is coupons for people who are walking or for people who are biking. And again, there could be ongoing subsidies, which include reduced cost of transit passes, so employees can pay less. Obviously, the commuter choice program goes a long way in making people think a lot smarter about how they're spending, how they can spend, what they have in terms of their wages on van pooling and on transit. And sometimes a bonus for carpooling goes a long way. You can also have membership fees, and you should definitely have some promotional events so that people see the presence of a building-based program, have events on a quarterly basis, again, have displays. And, at a minimum, there are some administrative costs that are included with launching building-based programs. So we don't want you to, again, get into this not knowing that there is a cost associated. Obviously, there's staffing and, there's the administrative side. The other aspect is to develop policies around your programs. Basically, what are the goals of your program? Do you have a goal? Do you have to, have, for example, are you trying to reduce trips by 15% or 20%? What are the modes that you may want to emphasize, again, based on where your building is located? Can you even introduce, teleworking to the tenants in the building? And by the way, a lot of, building owners at first may think that, oh, if people start teleworking, then we're going to lose tenants. Actually, a lot of people telework a day a week or 2 days a week and still come to the office. So a lot of teleworking programs really do not have an impact on the number of employees, but it reduces the number of days that those employees have to travel to work. Again, think about your financial incentives. Can you provide them? And what is the corporate culture like? Within your building. Are people amenable to ride-sharing, carpooling? Is it a practice? And if not, then this is a really great opportunity, to start introducing people to alternative modes. And you can develop your program in phases. So phase one might be very simple. It might just be having that display. with information. Phase 2 might be having someone who staffs it. Phase 3 might even, have a more active role in helping with the match listing and with the, van pooling aspects. We also want you to, definitely tap into our resources at 511, as well as if there is a transportation management association or organization near you, or transit providers, or if the, the city in which you're located provides any other resources. And obviously, marketing, as we all know, is the key to this. We talked about facility improvements, and this is something you need to think about really, at the beginning of the program, and think about what are some of those, structural changes that we talked about earlier that can be implemented. And I think that we all always benefit from champions. So it's great to know if there are some champions within your program. If there's a tenant that offers a really great program, you want to profile them. You want to make sure that other tenants, are in contact with each other and have those conversations. And obviously launching the program. As far as monitoring and tracking, again, this is where we come in. We can be very helpful. We can actually, as we've mentioned many times, conduct those surveys for you, do a baseline, do another survey for every year, or if you need it sooner, we can do focus groups, we can do interviews, we can come out to your site and talk to employees and find out what their attitudes are towards some of these programs that you're offering and whether or not they're in fact working. In terms of assistance, as you can see on this slide, what we're encouraging is that you can contact, Lydia Thornton for employer-based programs, and as you can see, Matt is a great resource for you on LEED certification. And if you're a property manager or property owner, I would be very happy to answer any questions you have. Now, I think this concludes our formal portion of the presentation. We are wondering if there are any questions. Again, a reminder that you can type in your questions underneath the chat box that Matt mentioned in the beginning. And so, John, I don't know if you're seeing any questions.
Yes, we do have a couple, and yes, hopefully people will still type some more in. Let me start off here with one of the first questions here. Let's see, my view here is a little small. Who's asking this one? Angie is asking, so we are a construction company and people come and go all times during the day. It is a challenge to implement the program. Some people commute usually in pairs because of location and when they are coming and going. I am not sure what to offer.
Okay, so if I understand, if I'm understanding the question, people don't, you have people on many different, it could be shifts, it could be that they're coming, and going at different times. We actually, through our matching product, do have the capability of matching people based on the time that they're coming. And obviously, that would be coming to work and leaving. But we also, provide people with match lists so they can actually call someone who lives near them and, works near them. And, of course, there's some protocol that goes along with that to see if carpooling can be a potential possibility. I think transit is also a great solution. If it's available. Again, we know that not everywhere is accessible by transit, but providing transit information, to the employees would be a great option. And, I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with the Commuter Choice Program, but it enables an employee to set aside a certain amount that for transportation purposes. and they will not be taxed on that. So even if you're not providing a subsidy, the employee can actually invest in van pooling, taking transit, or sometimes even paying for parking by using part of their income to pay for those types of options. So I'm hoping that some of these can generate ideas for you. Again, people who come and go to Old Times, bicycling is a great mode to promote, especially if they're not coming during peak times. It's a lot safer probably to promote bicycling and walking if people do live close. But I know that that's not always the case, and you'd be shocked at how many miles bicyclists are willing to put in to just bike to work. A lot of bicyclists are long distance commuters.
This is Linda Furness, and I'm one of the Employer Services representatives with 511. And if you need help determining what makes sense for your business and employees, your Employer Services representative with 511 can help you with that.
And Linda, I guess the best way for them to find out who their their rep is to go through Lydia, because that's the information that we have here. And then you would be directed either to Linda or some of our, other account managers that will be helping you with all that.
Correct.
So next question, it was asking whether slides will be provided. We did forget to mention that this is being recorded, and probably within one business day we will follow up with an email with a link to the recording. So I'm not actually sure how to answer if you are providing slides in addition to the recording. We are. That was asked by Melanie.
Okay, I think to simplify that, we definitely can share our PowerPoint if that's what the question is. I would encourage you to kindly send an email to Lydia Thornton and ask for the PowerPoints from this session, and we'll make sure that Lydia has a system in place for getting it to those of you who request them.
And again, we will follow up probably a day later with a link to this recorded session. The next question Angie was asking, is the match list on the website?
Linda, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Yes, so people can actually go and register through 511. They go to either 511.org or rideshare.511.org, and they can register for carpool and van pool ride matching as well as bike buddy matching there. And once they complete their registration, they would be able to see any of their matches online.
Angie was also saying that she has one bicyclist participating now. That is interesting. I think I'll jump in here. Our online match list also does have what we call kind of a bike buddy part to it, where they could find a match list of people who are willing to bicycle together to work. I don't have any other questions at this time that are typed in.
I guess if there are no other questions, John, that you're seeing, this concludes our session. And please, do call us, do email us. We're here to help you and help make your buildings, more amenable towards alternative transportation, and we can, help you with LEED certification. So please use us as a resource.
And I just want to thank you all at this time for attending our webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.